Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slasher U, a college football podcast for Slasher Sports. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with Steve Feck. It's 5 for Friday, everyone. Welcome back. We are only a day away from a fantastic college football Saturday. Don't forget to join us Saturday morning, 8 a.m., as we get ready for another Saturday morning special to get you ready for a fun-filled Saturday. This week is crazy. There are some really good football games. There's some really bad football games too. I know the sicko committees are getting excited around the world, but this is going to be a fun week. We got a really fun 5 for Friday for you. We got some good group of 5 games, some good FCS games. Obviously, FCS is on the market this week as College Game Day is heading to an FCS, first time in a long time. Really cool to see. So, Steve, welcome. It's going to be a fun 5 for Friday. Let's dig into it. How is everything going?
Everything's going great. Again, I mean, it's something that it's the deeper you get into the season, I think the more, I don't want to say it's a rhythm, but I think fans kind of know, oh, hey, this game's coming up. And you almost start planning out your weekend because you know that this game's coming up in 2 weeks or whatever. So you don't want to take the kids out to get pumpkins or do something like that. You want to make sure that you're home that particular day. So you might have that pumpkin that goes bad a little bit early because you didn't want to miss Michigan State or whatever.
That's right. And we saw football games last night with Southern Miss, Louisiana, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State. We got some games tonight and then games Saturday. Then we take the break off for, I guess you could call it the higher level of sports. I don't know these days. I think college football has really just been doing great. I think that the college football scene has been so good. I've really found myself straying away from NFL, but then you take a Sunday, Monday break, and then we're back from action. So we're heading into a week that has a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of college football. This is when college football is at its absolute prime, its absolute peak, because we get college football, 5 days a week. And that's great. So really, I mean, the weekend, Sunday, Mondays right now, because that's where we don't have college football. We don't get to enjoy the layer. That's when we get our replays in our condensed, watch your condensed games, the ones you didn't watch on Saturday. So you can watch college football 7 days a week. Don't get me wrong. I've done it. I'm doing it. So
right. And then if you have like ESPN Plus, you can watch them in archives as well. So, or even, or like you said, on YouTube, like Slasher U is on YouTube. You see a lot of different, condensed games. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's starting to feel like the holidays, not Christmas or Thanksgiving. It's football holidays. You've got the Thanksgiving Day games, Army Navy's coming up eventually. You've got the FCS bracket game starting soon. So yeah, it's
getting real. Yeah. And it's a holiday in itself this week for college football because the BCS rankings are going to come out this week. We got a lot of things to look forward to. But let's not dig in too far ahead because there's a lot and plenty to talk about. Mm-hmm. And if you've seen on Slasher U, you can see we've surpassed 100 videos on the YouTube channel in just a short amount of time. And that is all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for honestly keeping us excited, keeping us motivated, and just letting us enjoy this project that we're sharing with you guys. Thank you so much for the engagement and all the fun that we're having so far. Across our Twitter pages, the YouTube comments, everywhere across social medias, we're really having a good time with this. And, with basketball season starting up, if you notice, we're starting to get some content there as well. Plenty more from Slasher U to come by. So thank you so much. Please keep, sharing all the love and all that, because that's exactly what we're doing it here for. And with that being said, Steve, unless you got anything else you want to add, let's dive into it.
No, I was just going to say it helps us keep motivated to work harder. Because quite often in the comments, we come up with things like, I hadn't thought about that. Right. We're like, oh, wow, I should dig into that more. So, again, the show is about you guys. We're talking, but it's really about you guys. We want to get your engagement with whatever project we're doing. So don't be shy. Put your comments in, and what you think is as important as what we think.
Oh, absolutely. There was a comment just the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I can attest that there was a comment that was completely against the opinion I had on the video, but the argument the person in the comments made honestly made me change my mind. And that's exactly what we're here for. We're not saying we're experts. We're enthusiasts here. on Slasher U, and we want to hear people's opinions because that's what we're here for, to talk sports.
Right.
Perfect. All right. Well said. Thank you for joining our TED Talk. All right, now let's dig in to 5 for Friday. With the first game on the slate, this is going to be a fun one. I think that we kind of picked a slate in this one. When we were looking through the records, we tried to find some games that meant a lot, a couple teams that are up for a possible bowl bid, finding that 6th win. But when you dig into it really deep, you got some teams that either got embarrassed a few weeks back, had a heartbreaker a few weeks back, or maybe even last week, or a team or teams that are getting some love that maybe you and I, Steve, don't believe should happen. So with that being said, let's dig into our first game of the 5 for Friday, and that's Coastal Carolina taking on Marshall. Now, when you even just say that, Coastal Carolina, if we would have talked about this game a couple weeks ago, we would probably be saying this is a team that should be ranked in the AP top 25. They're undefeated. Well, no longer did that happen, even though I'm wearing my Norfolk Tides hoodie today, not my Old Dominion. Still, the city of Norfolk, that college in Old Dominion, did defeat Coastal Carolina just the other week and gave Coastal Carolina their first loss of the season. Honestly, someone who went to Old Dominion, follows Old Dominion football, I was not planning for that to happen. Did not expect it, I should say. Not planning. I'm not on that board, not on that coaching staff. But I did not expect that to happen. ODU came out. They looked fantastic. Blake Watson with their running game really showed up. Coastal did not. Grayson McCall, we talked about Coastal a few times this season. I think I picked against them the first game of the year. They obviously shocked and surprised me because I said Grayson McCall is a fantastic quarterback. But who is he throwing it to? Do you remember that? I said, but who's he throwing the football to? And it really kind of shined that question mark in that game against Old Dominion. They head into Marshall, the Thundering Herd. Well, that's another story in itself. We've seen peaks and valleys with the Thundering Herd this year. They've beat teams like Notre Dame, and they've lost to teams like Bowling Green. Imagine if this was like 2014, Steve, and I said that to you. A team like Notre Dame who was battling for the national championship, and Bowling Green, who is usually on the other side of that spectrum, sitting in around the 130s. Well, they found a way to beat Marshall. Marshall is just having one of those weird seasons. The Sun Belt is just Stun Belt, Fun Belt, whatever you want to call it. This game is going to be a exciting matchup in my mind because you have this is like the chip on the shoulder game. This is what I should call this one. It's on NFL Network. When you think about that, it could be an opportunity for Grayson McCall to really shine and be like, all right, let's try to show some draft stock. Does Marshall do the shocker again and come in and do what they did against Notre Dame? They're technically a 2.5-point favorite against Coastal Carolina. Marshall's 4-3, Coastal Carolina's 6-1. Initially, right off the bat, I still lean towards Coastal because I have liked what I've seen in the past with this team, just not recently, against teams like Old Dominion. And, they did almost blow a lead in a pass game. But I do still lean towards Coastal. I think Grayson can get it done. What's your thoughts?
I'm leaning toward Marshall.
All right, cool.
Now, when we were first talking about it earlier in the season, and we were talking about teams like Coastal or James Madison that potentially should be in the top 25, I was the guy saying Coastal, and I think some of those blemishes, even though they were winning, were starting to show. They gave up over 500 yards to Old Dominion, which I know made you very happy.
Very happy.
As an alum. And they gave up 323 rushing yards. Marshall knows how to run the ball. They haven't been as consistent, and I think that's where their problems have been. They have not consistently been able to sustain an offensive attack throughout games at times. But, I look at this. I mean, Coastal Carolina is 108th in FBS in defense. I think Marshall, while they're not a big play offense, they can grind it out, control the clock. And I think that helps them dictate what's going to ultimately happen come the fourth quarter. I think, it's Marshall. See, I have friends that are big Marshall fans, and I see them on a weekly basis. So that's always the question that they have for me. Well, I don't understand. Marshall looks so good sometimes. That's very, very true. I think I think Coastal Carolina might have already hit their peak.
Yeah, maybe we see a valley from them.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to be a plunging, like a deep rally, but I think they're going to start coming closer to the pack. And Marshall really needs to win this game in order for them to. They really don't have legitimate hopes to win the Sun Belt, but because the Sun Belt has been so unpredictable, maybe they kind of do it. If they can win out, maybe they can be part of the conversation. So, I mean, I'm going to go with Marshall, and it's not necessarily that I don't like Coastal Carolina. I just don't like the way they've come out and played the last couple of weeks. So, despite the 6-1 record and 3-1 in the conference, and it's not just Coastal. I think there's been a lot of teams, and not just in the Sun Belt, that we get all excited about, and then suddenly, okay, we're excited at their peak, but then they come out and fall flat, and then the next week they fall flat again, and so now you're starting to think, oh, okay, maybe we were a little bit too enthusiastic about a team like Coastal Carolina.
No, that's a very fair point. And honestly, I could see it happening that way. We just saw what Blake Watson from Old Dominion did to Coastal Carolina on the running side. Well, what about LeBourne? I mean, if LeBourne can do that, he is a better running back than Watson. ODU's running game is just getting going with a brand new offensive coordinator in Slate. Marshall has a solid running game, and we've seen that all season. We've looked at them. They're averaging, let's see here, they're averaging 204 yards a game rushing. That's impressive. And, Coastal Carolina is allowing 150 yards per game. So you find that balance there. Let's call it in the middle, 175 yards rushing. If they do that, Coastal Carolina's in trouble. And that relates to your 109th, you said, in defense. So
100, and I'm sorry, I think I said 108, but it's 106th actually.
Okay.
I mean, my failing old man eyesight did not pick it up properly. But I mean, Marshall already has a 1,000-yard rusher, or he already has 1,000 yards.
Right.
So, and Marshall does not allow the run. They shut that down. You mean the middle of their offensive line and their linebacking course, you don't run on Marshall. You might break a play here and there, but you don't run on them on a consistent basis. So that puts a little bit extra pressure on McCall. So does that get to be too much? I mean, he does have Pinochet, who seems to be his go-to receiver. He leads the team in receptions. But I think everything just kind of falls into place for Marshall, and it helps maybe get that bad taste of that Bowling Green loss, because, again, you and I both love the MAC, but yeah, Bowling Green is at the bottom part of that conference.
Yeah.
And they beat Marshall pretty convincingly, not necessarily on the scoreboard, but when you watch that game, they beat them.
You're swaying me, Steve, for this one, and I do think that I'm going to lean over, and I think I am going to lean with you and take Marshall in this one. I think you're right. I think the running game, if we see LeBourne get going, what I saw when I watched Coastal play Old Dominion, and this is the last game they played, that Coastal, when they were down and they got down big pretty quick, Grayson turned into a one-dimensional player. He had to throw the ball, and it didn't look very, very good, knowing that they had to throw the football. If Marshall can get up and get up fast, which could happen, especially if they let the run game go and then have them crowd the box and then they find a way to get it over the top, I could totally see Marshall doing that, and they win this football game. So with that being said, I'm not going to play the spread because I'm leaning pretty close, not back and forth. It's a 2.5 point favorite for Marshall. I mean, honestly, play the money line, whatever you want to play. Green at 3 points is not much. Over under 55.5. That's pretty close to if you add up what each of them are averaging points per game. And this one, I think, because they might rely on the run game a little bit, if Marshall gets up early, they might not push it too much. They might go into a control game. I would lean towards the under in this one.
That was my thinking with that too. Was it 55.5?
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, and I just don't see Marshall as being an explosive kind of offensive team, even though I think potentially they have the talent on the offensive side to maybe make big plays a little bit more. They're happy to run the ball. They know what they're doing. Their offensive line is much better in running schemes than pass protection. So yeah, fine. Run the ball and just see what happens. If you need to throw later, I think they have enough talent that they could do that. But I agree, go with the under here. And but I do think Marshall will cover the 2.5.
let's head on over to our second game of the 5 for Friday here in college football Friday. My God, I'm so happy that college football is coming this weekend. It's going to be so fun. Toledo and Eastern Michigan. To me, we just talked about the chip on the shoulder game. This is the vengeance game. This is the game of vengeance, and it's all about Toledo. I mean, Toledo, the Rockets, they're going to come in and they might put Eastern Michigan in space. I mean, this might be bad. Okay, Toledo, and the reason I say that is because if you paid attention to what happened last week, Toledo versus University of Buffalo, battle of the bigs in the MAC. The leader of the MAC is now the Buffalo Bulls because they came back from a 24-point deficit in the fourth quarter, Steve, against Toledo. Toledo, if you know anything about this team, I mean, they're usually the top of the MAC. They're one of those group of 5 teams that you talk about, usually being one of the top ones, paying attention to one of the better bowls for a group of 5 team at large. They're going to be angry and they're going to play angry. The adjustments have been made. Eastern Michigan, if you, for example, let's just put in comparison, Buffalo was down 24 points to Toledo in the beginning of the third quarter. Going into the fourth quarter, they wound up winning the football game. So Toledo was up by 24, assuming that crazy fourth quarter thing didn't happen. Buffalo blew out Eastern Michigan by the score of 50-31. Okay, put 50 points on. I am really thinking that Toledo is going to take off and run with this game. They're only a 6.5-point favorite. I'm slamming Toledo on that spread. I think they win by 2 scores and more. 54.5 is the over-under. Thinking it's an over game. I'm seeing this as like I really do think this is going to be like a 42-49-14 football game. Like, I think Toledo is really just going to just make a statement with Eastern Michigan.
I think that's what they hope. I don't know that it's going to be a blowout like that. I do agree there's going to be a lot of points on the board. And it's kind of funny because when you think about the MAC, you think, okay, Midwest. So when you think Midwest, you think Big Ten, and that's more grinded out, physical, a lot of good defenses. I mean, sure, you've got Ohio State and Michigan and, and sometimes, Michigan State sometimes had some great offenses, but really you think defensive football, the MAC, I don't even know why they even put a defensive side with some of the teams in the MAC.
With some of them, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, all they want to do is score. And Toledo is in the top, I think it's within the top 40 in rushing nationally. Their quarterback, a dual threat, but certainly on the ground, he is a lot more reliable. Finn is so much more reliable with Toledo. They grind out the ball. They can throw it, though. Again, that's where Finn gets in trouble. He had 4 interceptions last week, including, I want to say 3 of the 4 were in the second half. So that helped set up a lot of Buffalo situations. So I agree. Toledo needs to make a statement. They gave up 77 points to Ohio State. Okay, that's kind of tough. But Toledo's given up 30 points twice. I'm sorry, no, sir. They scored 50 points 3 times. So that's the kind of dichotomy that you have with Toledo. They're going to gun it. And I don't know that Eastern Michigan defensively, they're okay. I mean, as far as a MAC team goes, again, the defense is not the name of the game. There's no D in MAC. Okay, so it's. I think they can keep it running with Toledo. I think it's going to be back and forth. So where certainly you want to go the over, and I think Toledo's going to at least score 40 points. I wouldn't be surprised to see Eastern Michigan put up 30.
Okay, fair. All right. But we both think Toledo's going to win this football game, and it seems like by a pretty decent margin. You just think it's not going to be as crazy. I do think Toledo's just going to go out on an absolute statement. I've been wrong with these before. Don't get me wrong. We've heard all about it. Like, you said this was going to happen. Of course, that's what we're here for. We don't have one of those. I wish this was the magazine from Back to the Future. Okay. I wish it was, because I would not probably be doing a podcast with you, Steve. I'd probably be sitting on an island with a pina colada in my hand.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out with Eastern Michigan is they've kind of switched over to their sophomore quarterback, Austin Smith, and he has really done a nice job. I mean, he really had some nice moments in the games that he has taken over. So I think if they indeed is going to start, I believe he's listed to be the starting quarterback this weekend. I think that also changes the dynamic of the Eastern Michigan offense. So therefore, that's where I'm a little bit more confident that it could be a little bit more back and forth. Eventually, Toledo's going to pull away, and I think they'll cover the 6.5, but I don't think they're going to get blown out where it's going to be a 20, a 3-4 touchdown differential. I just don't see that happening.
6.5 points for spreads are sweet spots for me. Like if you feel like a team can win by a touchdown, then you play that all day long. 6.5 points, 5.5 points, give that to me all day long. Steve, love the hat you're wearing. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the gorgeous new hat from SlasherU that Steve's rocking. If you're listening to it, go ahead and check it out over on our Twitter page or on our YouTube page of Steve here. Brand new hat, brand new merch over on our Redbubble shop. If you want to check it out, the link is provided in the description below, or if you head to our Slasher Sports Twitter, it is in the link in our bio. It's in our link tree. Check it out. Fantastic. We're really looking forward to just trying to just share the love of SlasherU. We really are trying to push this brand in this program. We think it's going to be a really fun thing for a very long time. And it looks good, Steve. Looks real good on you.
Yeah, but it helps cover my face. It gives me that shade that kind of covers my face, which is really important. But the very good, very well done, well done. The nice thing is that you can also customize from a color standpoint, not necessarily with the hat, but like with your shirts. I mean, if you don't want it to be a traditional SlasherU color, you've got a favorite color. You can customize it because again, these aren't all pre-printed. When you order it, that's when they design and print the shirt and then they ship it out. And I think I had this hat in 5 business days.
Nice.
And that's including them having to screen print it and ship it to my home in Pittsburgh. So the turnaround is good as well. So please do check it out. Show your support. I was hoping to have my Roadrunner hat actually, but it still hasn't gotten it. It's still stuck somewhere out in the Federal Express sphere out there somewhere. So hopefully it'll be here really, really soon. They have a bye this week, so I don't really have to have my UTSA hat.
That's fair. It's a good time to have a delay if need be. But I feel like this is the time where you hold the sign up like the Roadrunner did and said, come on now, where is it at? Give me the hat where I need it. So check it out on the Redbubble site. Really excited. If you check it out this weekend, there's actually a pretty big sale, 30% off across all of Redbubble. So if you are looking for catching a deal, and if you do get yourself something from SlasherU or Slasher Sports, any of our awesome other great episodes and programs out there like Suki Suburbius or Honey Pot Project or the Slasher Sports Cinema with Billy Graves, one of the coolest horror shows in all the land. Check it out. All of that's on the Redbubble shop. You'll find it all there. But if you do, tag us on Twitter. Let us know that you got something. Send us a picture. We'll be sure to share it and send our love as well. So absolutely awesome. I'm excited for this. I definitely put an order in myself. I'm waiting for it to come. Maybe it'll get here before your other stuff gets here. I don't know. 5 business days. That's pretty quick. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a hoodie guy though. You saw my Slasher Sports hoodies. I got 2 of those. I got the old school one. I got the new Slasher one. I'm a hoodie guy when we're on here. Hoodies, polos, but you know me in a hats too, especially right now that if you've paid attention to any of our Slasher Sports stuff in the past, Billy and I are on a grow our hair out challenge, and it hasn't stopped yet. If you guys are OGs and you've been with us for a long time and you've heard that this was during baseball season, early baseball season, hasn't stopped yet. Hats are required right now. They are absolutely required.
I wanted to join that. And then I remembered all of the old guys that I always laugh at when they're like walking in the mall or you see them at a restaurant, and they've got the man tail and their hair is really long. You're 70 years old. Okay. Get with the program here. So I'm keeping it cropped. I'm trying to like represent the AARP crowd here.
There you go. Okay.
And look, though actually I probably should grow a beard because it would cover more. So that might be a better idea. But
yeah, I don't know. The beard thing, I took it off, took it out. I still can't figure out if I like the beard yet. I'm about 5 years deep into it ever since I got out of the military. I still can't figure out if I like it or want to keep it. I'm not sure yet. But all right, let's head over to game number 3 here, our final group of 5 game before we dig into some fun FCS ones. And this is a game that we have honestly, I've been looking forward to this football game a little less now because of what happened last week. But this is a game where we really haven't, in our minds, you and I are on the same page with this, Steve. I know we are. We've talked about it. And it's came up too often on our shows. We don't know what the AP sees in Cincinnati. And we keep saying, let's wait until they find it and play a team. And we said UCF, and then we can finally get an idea. And that's what this game is, Cincinnati versus UCF in this football game. Cincinnati's ranked in this one. There's a point in time where we thought that Cincinnati shouldn't deserve to be in that ranking. Right now, I do think they deserve a ranking, but not as high as they are. I'm still really low on this team. I'm just not impressed. If you're a Cincinnati listener, hit us in the comments. Let us know why should I believe in this team? Because I'm sure you do. There's a reason why you think this team is ranked. What am I missing? Like, let me know. I really want to know, because I'm having a hard time doing it with this Bearcats team. I know that we've seen them in the past look really good. Obviously we've seen them in the past look really good, but they're in we've really thought, and it looked like initially that they were in this kind of rebuilding year. And it's a young group of guys. So what am I missing? Let me know. They take on UCF on ESPN at 3:30. UCF is actually a 1.5 point favorite, 6-1 versus 5-2. I'm looking forward to this football game because I think UCF is a really good team. We saw what they did the other week against Temple, which obviously it's a game against Temple, but what they did was absolutely insane, 70-3. And then they lose pretty embarrassingly against ECU last week. And this is what it kind of took the fun out of this game for me a little bit, because I thought this was going to be a game where 2 6-1s are battling it out. We don't get to see that. This should have been a game where 2 ranked were playing against each other, because it should have been a 6-1 versus 6-1. We didn't get to see that. Cincinnati comes in beating, coming off against a 2-point win against SMU, only a 4-point win against USF, right? This is why, again, I don't really see what is going on with the Cincinnati. Why does AP love them so much? Please let me know. Like, I'm honestly really curious. But in this case, UCF is taking on Cincinnati. They're a 1.5 point favorite. I'm not going to give you my prediction yet, Steve. I want to hear what you have your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I've been rougher on Cincinnati than you have. You've at least tried to
I'm
be
honestly
fair.
just confused. Like, I honestly just don't know what they see in them.
And you talk about the SMU game and the USF game. Cincinnati, and before I say this, I think they're good. They're not a bad football team. They're a good football team,
right?
And they're well coached. Fickell is a really, really good football coach.
Very good.
And he's had to sort of reimagine this roster on the fly. And I think they are farther along than I thought that they would be.
Okay.
And I do think that there is a pretty dedicated and loyal media base, in the AAC. And I think that drives it too. Because again, media has votes, coaches have whatever it would be. But media drives a lot of these polls. And I think that's where Cincinnati's been getting that love, because it really is. It's an experience. It's a knowledgeable crowd that covers the AAC in the various markets. And I think that helps determine that deal. But they keep letting teams back into games. They actually, they're either ahead or they're comfortable at half. They pull ahead in the third quarter. Then the fourth quarter, they just seem to let them back in. And you watch, I've only watched condensed games, but it's not like the defense is wearing down per se. They just let the teams back in. And with an offense that like UCF has, you can't let them do that. I saw that UCF is averaging 506 yards per game. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, I have 511. So
wow. Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. You can't have a team, putting up that kind of yardage. You can't give them any kind of chance to get back into a game if they fall behind. I can see Cincinnati jumping out early and maybe forcing UCF to do things. But if you're putting up that kind of yardage, yes, it was Temple, but they still put up 70 points. It's not as easy as you would think. It's been an up and down year in a lot of ways for UCF. I think they haven't played as well as perhaps they thought they should. And on paper, I think they could be a better team than they've shown. But again, it's 500 yards per game.
Right.
That's a matchup problem. against anybody. I don't care who you're playing. If you're playing a top 25 team or a top 10 team, if you're averaging 500 yards, the odds are you're going to get 300 and some odd yards against better competition. That's still enough to win you a football game.
Gus obviously is going to take care of the adjustments in that football game that happened against ECU last week. If he does that and we basically push that one aside, you can assume that that's going to happen. You're going to come back to that UCF team that we've seen in weeks past. Putting that in comparison, UCF beat SMU 41-19. Cincinnati only beat SMU last week by 2. If you want to just put that in comparison, right? Is it fair? Now, this is a tough question here. Is it fair that the writers, the AP, are giving Cincinnati a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because they made the college football playoff last year and because they're only a one-loss football team right now? That why they're getting the rankings a little higher than maybe some others in the poll. Not saying you might agree with it, but is it fair that that may be the case?
Well, I've been saying this all year long with a lot of different teams. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we have had discussions about whether their ranking is too high or not.
Right.
But it's just the nature of the polls, I think. But I will always call out some sports writers who are just lazy and just fill in whatever name was on their ballot the last week and only make adjustments for teams that had big wins or big losses or whatever. This isn't even the 2000s. Okay. I mean, the information age, you have everything at your disposal. So there's no reason that you can't take an extra 10 or 15 minutes and look at every team that was in last week's poll and then see, are there teams that have earned their way in, like a Tulane, for example? And are there teams that really haven't lived up to the billing that need to either be dropped down or dropped out? So that's where, for me, I get upset because I don't think there's enough work being put in considering the amount of information at the disposal of coaches and player and media and whatever. That part bothers me.
Very fair point. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know in the comments, wherever you're listening, what's going on with Cincinnati. What are we missing? If we are missing something, or maybe you agree with us, maybe you on the same page with us. That happens a time or two sometimes. But with this side, I'm not going to give a prediction in this one. I know it's wild. We usually give a prediction every time at 5 for Friday. This is why, Steve, because I want to make this a topic, win or lose for Cincinnati on Monday. I want to come back to this conversation on Monday so we can say, what do we feel about Cincinnati now? Now that they finally played the team that we've been talking about, UCF, a team in their division who we've known is going to be a pretty tough task for them. After they played them, are they a for real team or not? Should we start giving them the credit they deserve, being in the top 20? Obviously, they're only going to move up if they win. Right now, they're ranked 20th in the nation. They're not going to get any lower. If they lose, they're probably not going to be ranked. So that conversation will probably go a little differently. But we will return to this conversation when we talk on Monday mornings. That is topic. I've already put it in black and white in pen. There's that click. It's going to be something to pay attention to. So that's why I'm not putting a prediction in. I don't know.
I am.
Put one. Okay, good. Let's hear it.
UCF.
Okay.
I have UCF, and I think UCF wins by a touchdown.
So you initially, right off the bat, before we even dig into Monday, you're initially saying that we're going to have this conversation, and we're going to say this is why we had all these question marks about Cincinnati.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. It's, again, the fact that they're letting teams back into games after getting up on them late. That concerns me. Both teams have been inconsistent, so I don't want to even think about doing the over/under on this game.
Right. No, good call.
But UCF, I think if their quarterback
Plumlee,
obviously Plumlee, right? I'm sorry, Plumlee. If he has one of his consistent up games,
yeah,
and I think he's due for one, I think that's the difference, and I think UCF wins by a touchdown.
Fair. Okay. I'm looking forward to having this conversation on Monday. Hopefully we get some comments from you all as well, and we can share them on the clip as well on Monday, because really this is a conversation that I would strongly use the word dumbfounded, because I honestly just do not understand why Cincinnati's there. I want to know what I'm missing. I really do. Steve, let's dig into the FCS for our final two games for Five for Friday. And we got to start off with where College Game Day is going. And that is Jackson State. They're taking on Southern. Very big game. Very big game. Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, if you will. I'll make sure I get that in there. Coach Prime is taking on Southern. It's going to be a fantastic football game. We've heard it. We've heard it, Steve, from a pretty big amount of people that this game is going to be huge, that this team has great recruits. People are going to show up. I've already heard, I think on the social medias, I think ESPN said it, there's going to be a predicted of 70 to 75,000 people there. I mean, that's amazing. Awesome. Fantastic.
The crowds are expected to be so big that you can't buy third party. You can't use third party tickets.
That's wild. I think that'll be close to, I would say, probably one of the biggest this year. I think they said Texas game, Alabama, Texas was 100,000, which, I mean, obviously the venue is bigger. But I mean, that's still electric for Jackson State there. This game is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be really fun. I know we've had some conversations in the past saying that because of their strength of schedule, we do not believe that they're the fifth best FCS team in the country. Speaking of Jackson State, they take on Southern, who arguably we could say maybe Florida A&M could take the ballot, but other than that, Southern is probably the other best team in the SWAC. This should be a good matchup. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I don't want to talk about College Game Day. I don't want to talk about Deion Sanders. I think we need to focus more on the players, on the field with this game. There's so much hoopla going around, and it's great for college football.
Very good.
Okay. And let me repeat that because there were some issues that we've run into. This is great for college football. It is great for the FCS. And it's awesome for HBCU programs. It is. Okay. They have these big recruiting classes. That's very, very true. But they have to perform on the field. And Deion's son, I really believe that in the right system, he could be an NFL quarterback now. He could start in the NFL now. He has that kind of talent, and his field vision is unbelievable. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. I really think that he could be what everybody was hoping Kyler Murray was going to be. When I look at him, that's who I think of. Just taking the quarterback position to a totally different level. It has to be the right coach in the right system. But I think he's going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL, and it's not going to be a position switch. He's going to be a quarterback. They have a good defense as well. Again, when you're scoring that many points and everybody's looking at the offense, everybody's like, woo. Their defense is solid. Their defense is consistent. They don't necessarily fall prone to giving up big plays. Every defense is going to get burned. I don't care what program you are.
Sure.
But they are just there, and they are consistent. Aubrey Miller, I only watched one full Jackson State game. I mean, I always go back and watch the condensed games. I'm an FCS junkie, so I probably spend too much time on FCS and not enough, with the Power 5 and the FBS. But Aubrey Miller's, he is a game changer. He's a difference maker in a game. He's somebody that I can see. He won't necessarily be a high draft pick, but I can see him going in the middle to late rounds and being a part of an NFL linebacking core as well. So again, the talent is undeniably there. It's a matter of how you view that talent, and is that talent really being challenged on a week-to-week basis because of their strength of schedule. That's not the player's fault. It's not even necessarily Jackson State's fault. It's the reality of the situation. In their conference, generally it's the haves and the have-nots. And Jackson State, last few years, they are the haves. Absolutely.
For sure.
A lot of people are kind of overlooking Southern. Bashawn McCray is really another younger quarterback that's really coming into his own. I think he's going to be a guy on the FCS circles that people are going to talk more and more about next year. But he's had a great year, and he had an unbelievable game against Prairie View A&M. He was 16 for 22, 275 yards, 2 passing TDs, 1 rushing TD. But he absolutely controlled that game. Southern has athletes as well, and they're going to keep it close, I think, for a while. This is such a big rivalry. You don't see blowouts right out of the gate usually, but I think the cream is going to rise to the top here. Once you get into the second half, midway through the third quarter or whatever, that's when you're going to start seeing Jackson State starting to roll it up a little bit more. It doesn't take away from what Southern can do, but Jackson State, they're just that good. Sometimes you have a team that is just so transcendent for its conference and who their opponents are. It doesn't demean the talent on those opponents' rosters. Jackson State is just that much better than anybody that they've played or anybody that they will play the rest of the year. And it's unfortunate that we will not get to see them in the FCS playoff bracket because of the Celebration Bowl. It's too lucrative financially. And that money isn't athletic department money. That money goes into athletic and academic scholarships. So Jackson State or any school in the MEAC or the SWAC can't walk away from that payday. I think it's awesome that payday is there for the Celebration Bowl. Maybe we need to get the NCAA more involved with the FCS and get more money involved in there so you can maybe tempt a generational team like Jackson State to forego the Celebration Bowl and go and try to match their wares against all the best teams in the FCS.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, McCray, leading passer and rusher on Southern. So definitely a guy to watch. We got two sophomore quarterbacks going at it in this one. I think that is going to be one of the ones to really pay attention to. You said there's already some great defense as well. This is going to be a good football game. I'm looking forward to paying attention to it. I haven't watched too much FCS this year because there's, like I said, I have always been a strong advocate of saying put FCS early in the week so we can get FCS and then FBS. That's just how I've always rolled. Because there's just, so much good FBS football on. But I will be paying attention to this game. This will definitely be on one of my screens. There's a lot of good football game on this week, especially in that middle round. The last couple of weeks, we've actually had some tough times around, 2, 3, 3:30 slots. It's not this week. This week, I feel that's where all the prime games are. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Jackson State can win this one. I'm still shocked about the number I heard about. 75,000 people going to be there. If you look at ESPN.com, they say the capacity for Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium is about 45,000. So, I mean, it's probably going to be one hell of a party down there. And we heard that in our comments in our last Jackson State video of how people are excited to go down there. And it's going to be wild. I'm sure we're going to see some really cool scenes. Game day should be pretty electric. It should be a good game overall. Jackson should move to 8-0. That's what we are expecting here. Southern move to 5-3 if they get the loss. Should be a good football game. Again, you're right there with you. If it wasn't for the Celebration Bowl, which you can't blame whatsoever to take that paycheck.
No.
You got it. You can't blame it whatsoever. That's a bigger than football decision. But it would be great to see them play a team like a North Dakota State, or something like that, make it through. Because I do think that if they went to that playoff bracket, they would have a very strong chance to make it to that national championship. I just would like to have that ammo to say they did it, not it could happen, right? That's what we're all about. We talk about the could happens because that's, we want to have those scenarios. We just talked about last week, the scenarios on what was going to happen in the college football playoffs, but not even that week, on Monday. Scenarios. So scenarios are fun. If we didn't talk about scenarios or what ifs, then we would have a very boring time talking about sports, I feel. I feel like this is going to be one of those what ifs that stay a question for the foreseeable future. I don't see that changing for a pretty long time. All right, next FCS. To finish out our 5 for Friday, you got Fordham taking on Holy Cross. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, both ranked teams. Fordham ranked number 15, and depending on where you look at Holy Cross, they are ranked number 9 in the coaches poll, but they are tied for 5th in what they call the Stats Perform rankings. And that's the cool thing about FCS is that they offer both of that out on the website. In essence, there's no secrecy about how the playoff bracketing is going to be. Again, it's a much more expanded field in FCS, but there's no secrecy there about what team might be in contention because you're seeing those rankings based on things like strengths of schedule and offensive efficiency and things like that. So that's what's kind of cool about the FCS rankings. So you've got two sets of polls, and right from week one which teams are being looked at from a more analytical standpoint and a strength of schedule standpoint and a conference standpoint, as opposed to what the coaches are just doing because there are familiar names: North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State. There's a lot of focus on the Western conferences for good reason. But Holy Cross is tied for 5th. They're leading the Patriot. They're undefeated. They do everything well. They're so well coached, but they do every offense, defense, special teams. They have a cornerback that has blocked a punt in 4 straight weeks. And I'm sure that might have happened somewhere along the line. I've
never heard of it.
I have never heard of it. Right? It's the first. It's just amazing. But again, it just shows that they dominate. As far as scoring defense, I believe they are 7th in the country. But they are the most dominant defense in FCS. So when you're watching a game and not just seeing what the final scores are, when you're watching a game, they dictate to the opponent, you're not going to run on us. You're not going to beat us for a big play. If your blocking schemes work or whatever, and you get a big play, good for you. But it's not going to happen much. Fordham is no gimme. They have, in Tim DeMurat, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He has thrown for the most yards in FCS. He's a great quarterback. We've been unabashedly cheering for the UTSA Roadrunners.
Yep.
And we talked about several times how they had 3 receivers that had a good chance to, average 100 yards a game. And Fordham has that. Fordham very well might not only have guys that are all going to average 100 yards a game. They have 3 guys that are on pace to potentially get 1,000 yards each. So again, Fordham is no pushover. And when you think of Fordham these days, you think of basketball. You don't necessarily think football. They didn't play football for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
But Vince Lombardi went to Fordham and played for Fordham. Back in the 30s, and I wasn't quite born then, but back in those days, in the nascent days of where college football was bigger than pro football.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Fordham was a national power. You thought of Fordham, you thought of Notre Dame, you thought of University of Chicago, you thought of all those are the kind of programs that you thought of. But I just don't see a Bob Chesney team losing to a Fordham or losing to anybody really on their schedule at this point. What he has done there as far as building a culture as well as a sustainable recruiting, a flow of recruits there at a school of that size. Okay. It's amazing. He has never coached a team, and he's had 3 stops. He's never coached a team that did not have a winning record in their conference.
Wow.
So again, you're looking at not only are they balanced offense, defense, special teams, you've got a coaching staff and a culture that wills winning. They won 3 straight Patriots. They're going to win a 4th. Fordham's a great team. I'm sure they will get into that bracket, to play in a playoff.
Mm-hmm.
But Holy Cross is going to get a first round bye for sure. I mean, they're going to be in the top 8 in the country. And I think, honestly, come the end of the season, I think they're going to be in the top 3 or 4.
Interesting. Okay. This is the battle for the lead in the Patriot right now, as Holy Cross is 3-0 and Fordham is 2-0 in the conference. Obviously Holy Cross 7-0, Fordham 6-1. This is another one of those games where you have a quarterback in Holy Cross and Sluka who's leading the team in passing and in rushing, responsible for 21 touchdowns. So this is going to be a really interesting game. I take your word for it. The Holy Cross will come out with this one, but it seems like it might be a little closer than some might anticipate. I'm looking forward to this one too. I found myself watching some FCS last week as well, which was great. A lot of it does come on replays because there's just so much dang football. There needs to be, and during football season, they need to have 14 days a week. That's when we need. That's what needs to happen, right? It's just they haven't figured that one out yet.
There's been a lot of talk about, even at the FBS level, starting to fill in those gaps. Like, okay, like the MAC, we know the MAC plays during the week, but having some of those conferences playing, I mean, Thursday night, in essence, has been ceded to college football if they want to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yes, and we know the NFL. We know the NFL's not doing anything with Thursday night football. I mean, they've been completely awful. Come on, tell me this, Steve. You get the MAC on Tuesdays. You get I think the Sun Belt's been trying to take over one of the days too, but you get FCS Thursdays or something like that. You get Sun Belt on Wednesdays. Leave Sunday, Mondays to the pros. Fine, okay, but you give me Tuesday through Saturday college football. I'm happy. I know I'm not the only one. So.
Right. Because there's 131 in the FBS level.
Yeah.
And I think there's another 211, I believe, at FCS. Yeah, there's plenty of. Not only do you have streaming platforms, but again, Thursday night is strictly on an exclusive stream, and eventually, on Amazon Prime. That's going to build. I think it's going to be a very valuable asset. Mm-hmm. But you listen about a lot of the football conferences talking about trying to get streaming deals. The Pac-12 was involved in those discussions about maybe inking with Amazon. So between streaming and filling in the void where now you don't have it on Fox or FS1 or ESPN 2 or 3. I mean, do you really need to have cornhole championships on 5 days a week on ESPN? Again, and for people that participate, that's great. Pickleball, that's awesome if that's what your sport is. But on TV, you don't need it on multiple nights a week. The legs feed the wolf. For college sports, football needs to be able to be moving and need to be running all the time and always on the hunt. So fill in those voids. If the NFL's giving it to you, take it. Say thanks. Yeah, we'll take these days, but we'll make the most of it. And I think that's going to allow better parity and a better profile for some of these non-Power 5 conferences and for FCS schools. So that if there's a player in Helena, Montana, that's considered a 5-star recruit, if he knows he's going to be on TV and his friends are going to be able to see him, maybe he stays at Montana or Montana State. Yeah, so I think the sky's the limit for college football. I think the NFL is the dominant force, but it doesn't mean that college football can't fill in those gaps that they're leaving.
I like what you just did there. You said the sky's the limit while talking about a Big Sky team. That was good.
I didn't think you picked that up on that, but
Don't you worry. Yes. Don't you worry. I picked that up. No, I think that would be a really great idea to do that. And I feel like we're preaching to the choir here, because if someone's watching us and consuming some college football content, you probably feel the same way. You want that. I want to see that. If you're interested, for example, if you want some more FCS content for you tonight, there is one FCS game, Yale versus Columbia. That's on ESPNU. Check that one out before you head over to your Saturday games. That's going to wrap it up here for 5 for Friday. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching or listening. If you are watching us on the YouTube, please hit us a like, comment. We know we get some comments and we reply to every single one of them. So send us a comment. Love to interact and engage, and hit that bell, because we are giving you brand new content all the time, sometimes up to 20 videos a day. That's how much content we're giving you between college football and now college basketball. Tip-off coming up. And I know, Steve, you're excited. We're just dropping some Big East previews. The full preview came out, but or if you want on the YouTube page to get some individual on some of the pieces, we got a Pac-12 preview coming out, an SEC preview coming out soon. It's going to be a very fun time for college basketball. Women's basketball previews coming out very soon as well. Look for that in the feeds next week. A lot of good stuff to check out. And while you're at it, If you're checking out some feeds, head on over to Slasher Sports on the Twitter or slashersports.com and check out our other shows as well. Suki Suburbia has her Honeydew Project, where she takes on and talks to some very, very interesting people and talks about the world. This is one of the best society podcasts out there. I really enjoy that show, Steve.
Absolutely right. And it's just people like you guys out there, or Christian and I. It's not necessarily topic or genre specific. It's just people that are doing just amazing things, and they're just everyday people. They're probably your neighbors that do the same things. And Suki's finding those people, and it's a great listen.
If you're looking for more horror and you have a little bit of popcorn maybe sitting in your pantry looking to pop, well, check out Billy Graves, Slasher Sports Cinema, where he sits down and talks to some of the most interesting people between directors, writers, actors in the horror world. Talks about movies of old, movies of new, and just really anything about the horror scene.
And what Billy does, like Suki does, you get to know the guests. So yes, you already know the movies they were in, or what they directed, or what they wrote, but you really get to know more about the person and how they became enamored or became involved in horror, the genres. And a lot of people that are in horror movies aren't, they're not just in slasher films or screamer films. I mean, there are people that do voiceover work, and they and other, I don't want to say legitimate theater, but more traditional kind of theater. But they've kind of made their mark in the horror genre, and you get to know about those people and how they developed as artists and what inspires them to produce within the horror genre. So it's not, you don't have to say, well, gee, they spooked me out, or they were. It's not just about the gore, or gee, how'd you make it seem like the blood was spurting out of that wound? That's not what they're getting into the details of. I mean, I'm sure they talk about it at times. It's more about the creative process and the people involved. So it is a people podcast. It's a story. It's not just, oh, that was great. They killed X number of people in the first 10 minutes. That's not the kind of podcast this is. So make sure you tune into that.
Yeah, really, really great show by Billy. You can find all of those on slashersports.com. You can see the links on our Twitter page at slashersports. And you can also find those links in our show description below. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining today. We'll be back here Saturday morning, 8 a.m. for our Saturday morning special. It's going to be another great one for you. We have a fantastic Saturday six-pack for you. We have some good Misfit games. I really like the slate that you and I have put together, Steve. And we're going to talk about some other good topics because some of them are a little outdated now. We got some new fun topics for you to get ready for the Saturday morning special. If you are going to join us, send us your bold takes in the comments about your game of the week for Saturday, or who you're rooting for, what game you're paying attention to. Let us know in the comments. We're really looking forward to that one.
Right. Or if there's a game that you want us to cover in the next week's worth of programs, tell us that. Okay. If you're like, well, wait a minute, why haven't you talked about a team from from the SWAC, or a team, why aren't you spending more time in Conference USA, whatever? Let us know what it is that you would like us to talk about. Because every football program has a story. We want to help you tell it.
That's right.
And we can't tell it without your input. So
that's right. No school left behind, no story too big or too small for us. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll be back here with another episode tomorrow. Take care.